Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'll be talking about my favorite topic, that's an APIs. So Salesforce offers a lot of APIs, right? Out of box APIs functionality. So before I get into the nitty gritty stuff of APIs, so I just wanted to talk briefly about the advantage of using API. Why do we need API at first place, right? So we have a Salesforce system, right, in place. Now that's great. Now you can do a lot of stuff using Salesforce, but at times you might also want to interface your Salesforce with an external system, right? Could be an SAP, could be an Oracle, could be Bamboo HR, could be Workday, could be Splunk, or or LinkedIn or Jira, whatever, right? Excuse me. So to do that, you need to have an interface mechanism, right? You need to have a way of Salesforce handshaking with an external systems. So how do you do that? So you can either expose the Salesforce API, or you can consume the API exposed by a third party. Okay. Now, so that's one in a nutshell why APIs. It's an application programming interface. Okay. So API first approach makes it very um, it's a very common term that's these days used, right? So you have to, before you consider about the UI experience, you just try to see, what functionality you want, and then you start designing an API, right? A robust API to cater for the functionality before you even worry about the user interface. So that's API first approach in a very nutshell, right? I might have haven't done justice to the definition. My apologies for that, but just to give you a glimpse, just to give you a head start, right? You think from an API perspective first before you even think from a UI perspective, right? That's the API first approach. Okay, now, so when you talk about an API, right? Like I said, API Salesforce APIs are of different types. One is the REST API, right? So, and then we have a SOAP API. So, and these are the nutshell, the bulk API, right? So now the REST API is obviously based on the REST principle, right? And any functionality you want to write, rewrite, CRUD access to update, delete, you can expose it using an API, right? Salesforce out of box comes with an API. For instance, if you wanted to expose your account information, you can do that using an API, right? And a calling program, say an SAP, they can pretty much consume your Salesforce REST API to get the data, whatever they want, or they can push the data back, right? And to do so, the Salesforce has to handshake with, say, Salesforce, with SAP, and they will need an authentication, right? So you can use OAuth, right, which is pretty, or you can use username and password, which is pretty primitive and very basic, right? Um, just to, I mean, you can't keep your API open. So that's the one thing I always say to people, right? If they're building an API, you need to have an authentication in place, right? Otherwise, anyone can access it, anyone can corrupt your data, right? So from that perspective, it's very important you understand that APIs has to be encrypted or authenticated. I mean, so most of the time, right, REST API deals with JSON, right? That's the pretty lightweight and easy readable. You can also do XML, but JSON is the preferred. Then we have SOAP, right? And it actually uses WSDL, which is a web service description language, and it's pretty commonly used, right? In back in the day, SOAP is the most commonly used API for integration, and because SOAP uses XML and it's based on a contract first, right? The both systems should format a contract to say, okay, I will use the XML what you gave me, and we form a contract. Okay, it's okay. I mean, it still works, but it's not really lightweight and it's not mobile ready. Okay, so if you wanted to use your API for a mobile, then SOAP is not a great solution. You have to go with the REST. Okay, um, so and it's mostly server to server integration if you're after. Then the SOAP API is the the best way. I've talked about the REST API in detail in one of my integration series. I'll put the link in the description below. I will highly encourage you to check it out. I've shown how to consume um, a an API and write a JSON parser, and then do whatever the operation is supposed to do, right? So you can watch that video. I mean, I've covered in detail, right? It will give you a head start if you've never done REST API development. Okay, then we have a bulk API. Bulk API is pretty different to REST API. So if you wanted to, deal with massive amount of data, then the bulk API is the best way to go forward, because although the REST API and the SOAP API will give you an advantage, of dealing with, quite a decent amount of data, but if you are talking about 50,000 above, then, SOAP and REST is not really a great option. You need to look at the bulk API option. Okay, and and it's asynchronous. Okay, so if you're after a synchronous operation, then you go for a REST or a SOAP. But if you're after an asynchronous, so please stick to the bulk API. It has bulk API 1 and bulk API 2. Okay, so but if you wanted to build using bulk, use 2.0. Okay, now if you wanted to deal with the streaming, like if you wanted to deal with a publisher subscriber or pub sub model, where a user can subscribe to your channel using Comet D, then you pretty much should be using the streaming API. Um, so the thing is that I've gone with those days where you actually have to poll for the changes, right? With the streaming API, it actually can push the change. Okay, like change data capture is there, right? You can use platform events, right? You can push the change. So whoever system, like for instance, right? I give you a very simple example. You can trigger a change using a platform event, and then you have an LWC component, which you subscribe to it. So whenever change happens to the platform, whenever a trigger pushes a platform event, the LWC will receive it and booms whatever it's supposed to do, right? Uh, so so now this is one of the things I talked about, API access and authentication, right? When I talked about the REST API, it's very important that you guys to understand that you have to have a right authentication in place, right? It could be in the form of an auth, right? It could be in the form of a username and password, right? So auth is most commonly the preferred one, and it's more safer and more secure, right? And then also when you're dealing with API, right? So you have to understand that Salesforce sets a limit. Okay, so there is a certain limit of API per day, right? So you can't just keep on blindly using it, So that's where you can say here, an enterprise edition org gets 1,000 calls per Salesforce license and 200 calls per partner community license. And you should just read about it if you're interested. It's good to know, right? And you can also buy an additional API calls pack that an extra 4,000 calls, right? Now, okay, so this is pretty cool. All right, now this table is very important. The reason why it's important, right? I think you should make a copy of it. Keep it next to you. If you're an integration developer, you will need it. Okay. The reason why, if someone comes to you and say, okay, I wanted to deal with the synchronous operation, right? And I'm on only JSON, right? And so you probably have a few options here. You have REST API, okay. You have Chatter API, user interface API, right? Um, Tooling API. So these are the APIs, but all does different stuff. Okay. Now, if someone comes to you and say, "Look, I wanted to do CSV, right? I have CSV. I wanted to import it, and I'm happy to do in an asynchronous way. Can I use the REST API? Absolutely not. You can't. As you can see from the table, the REST API do not support CSV, right? Based on this table, right? Now, so you can use the bulk API. Pretty simple, right? The metadata API, it's a SOAP, right? So you get an XML, which is pretty obvious. Um, right now, I talked about the REST API. If you wanted to use the light, and if you wanted to use a for the mobile, then it's pretty much go for the REST API. SOAP API. If you already have a system in place which is but stick to the contract only agreement, then use the SOAP API. REST Chatter API, right, for the feeds and user groups and followers, right? Chatter is pretty useful. And if you wanted to build the same native mobile app and um, as you have for the Lightning, right, then you use the user interface. Then you have an analytics API, then you have bulk API, metadata if you want to get the metadata imported, streaming API, I talked about it, right? You can customize your own API, you can build your own custom REST, you can build your own custom zone, right? So, and tool API if you wanted to deal with custom development tools, right? Then you can pretty much use the tooling API. So this is a briefly I wanted to talk about in a nutshell about APIs, right? I mean, like I said, I've talked about um, REST API. I built the REST API for you guys. I've written a JSON parser. Just go through it, because I don't want to repeat it again. Let's be honest, right? I've covered it. I mean, API won't get old, right? Concepts will remain the same. So there's no point in redoing again and again. So just follow it if you haven't done so. If you have any questions, you please reach out to me, right? So that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing Wednesday. It's raining outside. I don't know if you heard the noise, but it's been raining, right? Yeah, it's a typical spring for New Zealand. All right, guys. Adios.